In a world where everything seems to be constantly shifting, jobs evolve, societal norms change, and the rapid pace of life can feel overwhelming, it's easy to find ourselves lost and disconnected. We often know what needs to be done, yet we feel paralyzed, trapped in cycles of inaction, repeating the same patterns and hoping for different results. We drift away from our goals, our relationships, and even our sense of self, feeling like mere spectators in our own lives. But the true power to change does not lie in the world around us. It lies within us. It's time to stop waiting for change to come from outside and start rebuilding ourselves from within. Today, we will explore 7 Stoic steps that can help you reclaim your inner strength and reshape your life. But what if the key to navigating this ever-changing world isn't found in external circumstances, but within ourselves? By tapping into the core principles of Stoicism, we can find a sense of clarity and direction amidst the chaos. These 7 steps aren't just about thinking differently. They are about living differently. They are about taking practical, actionable steps that align with our true values and help us build a resilient foundation for the future. When the world changes rapidly and our internal compass is shaken, it's essential to rebuild ourselves from the inside out, starting with our habits, our routines, and our mindset. Let's embark on this journey together and discover how to rebuild ourselves through Stoic wisdom. 3. Cultivate inner strength. Strength is often seen in the might of the body, the power to overcome obstacles, to conquer foes. But there is another kind of strength, one that is quieter, deeper, and far more resilient, the strength of the mind, fortitude of the spirit. This inner strength is not about dominating others or proving one's might. It is about remaining steadfast in the face of adversity, finding calm amidst chaos, and maintaining one's principles when the world around you is in turmoil. The Stoics teach us that cultivating inner strength is essential for navigating life's challenges with grace and purpose. Let me take you back to a time during my reign when Rome was faced with an unexpected crisis. Plague had swept through the empire, decimating the population and striking fear into the hearts of the people. The air was thick with despair, and each day seemed to bring more bad news. It was a time of great uncertainty, and even the bravest among us felt the weight of fear. I too felt the pressure. An invisible hand pressing down, urging me to act out of desperation, to make decisions driven by panic. One evening, as I walked through the dimly lit halls of the palace, I felt the tension gnawing at my soul. I sought refuge in the quiet solitude of my study, lighting a single candle against the darkness. As the flame flickered, I found myself recalling the words of an old Stoic teaching. Greatest battles are fought not on the fields of war, but within the mind. I realized then that my struggle was not with the plague, with my own fear and anxiety. To lead Rome through this crisis, I needed to cultivate not just courage, but an unshakable inner strength. The following day, I called a meeting with my closest advisors and generals. We are facing a great challenge. I began, but it is not the plague itself that will defeat us. It is the fear it inspires. We must remain strong, not just in our actions, but in our hearts and mind. We must show our people that even in the darkest of times, we can find light. My words were met with nods of agreement, and slowly a sense of resolve began to replace the fear. It was not an easy path, but by focusing on building our inner strength, we found the courage to face the crisis head-on. Consider the story of a Roman gladiator who, despite his imposing physique and mastery in combat, found himself trembling before a great fight. He had faced many opponents before, but something about this match had unsettled him. An older, more seasoned gladiator noticed his unease and approached him. "Strength is not about having no fear," he said, "but about feeling the fear and fighting anyway. Remember, the greatest battles are not fought with the sword, but with the spirit. Fortify your mind, and your body will follow." The younger gladiator, inspired by these words, spent the night not in fear, but in quiet contemplation, focusing on his breath, calming his mind. The next day, he entered the arena not with a reckless bravado, but with a calm determination. Fought well, and though he was wounded, he emerged victorious, not because of his physical strength, but because of the inner strength he had cultivated. Or think of a Roman healer, overwhelmed by the constant demands of caring for the sick and wounded. She found herself on the brink of exhaustion, her hands trembling, her spirit weary. One day, an old patient who had witnessed her tireless work took her hand and said, "Your strength is not in the number of lives you save, but in the compassion you show, the calm you bring to those in pain. Find your center, and you will find your strength." The healer, touched by these words, began to take a few moments each day to meditate, to breathe deeply, to reconnect with her inner self. She discovered that by nurturing her own spirit, she was better able to care for others, to bring a sense of calm and strength to those around her. People often equate strength with outward displays of power or control, but the Stoics teach us that true strength comes from within, from a place of inner calm, from a resilience that does not waver with the storms of life. It is the strength to remain true to one's principles, to stay steady amidst the turmoil, to find peace even in the midst of chaos. There's a deep wisdom in cultivating inner strength. I once met a senator who was known for his fiery speeches and his bold declarations. Yet, behind closed doors, he was plagued by doubt and insecurity. He sought my counsel, saying, "How can I project strength when I feel so weak inside?" I told him, "Strength is not about shouting the loudest. It is about knowing when to be silent, listen, reflect. Build your strength from within, and you will find that the world will listen." Took my words to heart and began a daily practice of reflection and meditation. Over time, he found a new sense of confidence, not born of bravado, but of a deep inner strength. So how do you cultivate inner strength in your own life? Start by quieting the mind, by finding moments of stillness amidst the noise. Reflect on your values, your principles, purpose. Build a foundation of calm and clarity, so that when challenges arise, you are not easily shaken. Remember, as I have often written, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. By cultivating inner strength, you prepare yourself to face whatever life may bring with grace, resilience, and calm. And most importantly, by focusing on your inner strength, you discover a well of courage and determination that can never be taken from you. This, my friends, is the path of the Stoic: to build a fortress of the mind, to stand firm in the face of adversity, and to find strength not in the world outside, but in the spirit within. 2. Harness the power of self-mastery. Self-mastery is the foundation upon which all other virtues are built. In the chaotic world we inhabit, filled with distractions and temptations, maintaining control over our own minds, emotions, and reactions is not just a challenge, it is an art. The Stoics teach us that to truly master oneself is to be unshakable, to remain calm amidst the storm, find strength in restraint. But how do we cultivate this self-mastery? How do we transform ourselves from creatures of impulse to masters of our own fate? Let me share with you a story from my own life that taught me the profound power of self-control. It was during a particularly turbulent period of my reign. The political climate in Rome was tense, with factions vying for power and whispers of conspiracy lurking in every shadow. I was faced with constant provocations, insults from political opponents, betrayal from those I once trusted, and challenges to my authority at every turn. There was a part of me that wanted to react, to respond with force and fury, crush those who dared to defy me. One day, as I sat in my chambers, brooding over the latest insult from a rival senator, an old memory surfaced in my mind, a lesson from my youth. My mentor, a wise Stoic philosopher, had once said to me, "Marcus, true power is not in the ability to strike, but in the strength to refrain. To master others is strength. To master oneself is true power." I realized then that my anger, my desire to lash out, was not a sign of strength but of weakness. I was allowing external events to dictate my inner state, to control my actions. That evening, I decided to take a different approach. I invited the senator who had insulted me to a private dinner. He arrived, clearly expecting a confrontation, posture tense and defensive, but instead of anger, I greeted him with calm and warmth. We spoke not of politics or power, but of life, philosophy, the challenges we both faced in leading this great empire. Slowly I watched as his demeanor softened, as his hostility gave way to understanding. By the end of the evening, we had found common ground, a shared purpose. I had not only diffused a potential conflict, but I had also gained a new ally, all through the power of self-mastery. It was a lesson that stayed with me throughout my reign, the importance of maintaining control over one's emotions, of not allowing the actions of others to dictate my response. I learned that in moments of anger or frustration, it is not the external event that disturbs us, but our own judgments about it. By mastering these judgments, by controlling our impulses, we gain the true power to shape our destiny. Consider the story of a Roman gladiator, renowned for his skill and ferocity in the arena. He was undefeated, feared by all who faced him. Yet, despite his physical prowess, he was plagued by a fiery temper. After one particularly brutal fight, he was taunted by a rival, a young and inexperienced fighter who sought to gain favor with the crowd. The gladiator, consumed by rage, lunged at him, only to find himself disqualified for breaking the rules of the arena. In his anger, he had lost not just the fight, but his honor. It was then that an old trainer approached him and said, "Strength is not in your arms, but in your mind. To conquer your enemy, first learn to conquer yourself." The gladiator took these words to heart. He began to train not just his body, but his mind, practicing restraint, learning to channel his emotions rather than be controlled by them. Over time, he became known not just for his strength, but for his calm demeanor, his strategic mind. He rose to even greater heights, not through force, but through self-mastery. Or think of a Roman merchant who was known for his sharp business acumen, but was also notorious for his impatience and impulsive decisions. He would often make rash investments, driven by greed or fear of missing out, only to find himself facing ruinous losses. One day, after a particularly disastrous deal, he sought the counsel of a Stoic philosopher. "I cannot control myself," he confessed. "I act on impulse, and it is destroying my life." The philosopher smiled and said, "You cannot control the markets, the whims of fortune, or the actions of others, but you can control yourself. Learn to master your impulses, and you will master your fate." Inspired by this advice, the merchant began to practice restraint. He took time to reflect before making decisions, to weigh his options carefully. He learned to act not out of impulse, but out of wisdom. In doing so, he rebuilt his fortune and, more importantly, found a sense of peace he had never known. People often believe that reacting quickly, striking out at the first sign of offense, is a sign of strength. But the Stoics teach us that true strength lies in self-control, in the ability to choose our response rather than being a slave to our impulses. There is a profound wisdom in harnessing the power of self-mastery. I once met a young soldier who was struggling with his temper. Despite his bravery on the battlefield, he was prone to fits of rage, which often put him and his comrades in danger. He came to me for advice, and I told him, "Your anger is a weapon, but it is pointed in the wrong direction. Turn it inward, control it, and you will find a strength greater than any sword." He took my words to heart and began to practice meditation, to reflect on his emotions rather than being ruled by them. Over time, he became a leader among his men, not just for his courage, but for his calm, his composure, his self-mastery. So, how do you harness the power of self-mastery in your own life? Start by observing your reactions, your impulses. Reflect on what triggers you, what drives you to act out of anger or fear. Practice restraint. Take a breath, consider your options. Remember that you have the power to choose your response, to control your actions, to master yourself. Remember, as I have often reflected, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. By harnessing the power of self-mastery, you gain control over your life, your destiny, your true self. And most importantly, by choosing self-mastery, you build a foundation of inner strength that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. This, my friends, is the path of the Stoic. To master oneself, to control one's mind, and to live with a sense of calm and purpose, no matter what life may bring. 3. Rebuild your confidence through daily wins. Confidence is not something that appears overnight, like a sudden burst of sunlight through the clouds. No, confidence is built slowly, like a wall, brick by brick. It is the result of small victories, the daily wins that may seem insignificant on their own, but together create a foundation of self-belief and inner strength. The Stoics teach us that to rebuild our confidence, we must focus on these daily triumphs, however minor they may seem. Each step forward, each challenge overcome, no matter how small, is a step towards becoming the person we are meant to be. Let me share with you a story from my early years, long before I wore the crown of Rome. I was a young man then, still learning the ways of leadership and discipline. I remember struggling with a lack of confidence, doubting my abilities, feeling overwhelmed by the expectations placed upon me. One day, as I wandered through the city, lost in thought, I came upon a group of workers building a great stone wall. I watched them for a while, noting the precision with which they placed each stone, careful way they smoothed the mortar, patience with which they checked their work. It was slow, painstaking labor, yet there was a rhythm to it, a sense of purpose. Intrigued, I approached the foreman and asked, "How do you build something so vast, so formidable, one small stone at a time?" He looked at me, smiled, and replied, "We do not focus on the whole wall, young man. We focus on placing one stone perfectly, then another, and then another. Eventually, the wall builds itself." His words struck a chord with me. I realized that I had been looking at my own life all wrong. I was so focused on the enormity of the task, the weight of the expectations, that I had forgotten to appreciate the small steps, the daily efforts that would lead to success. That day, I made a decision. I would start focusing on small, achievable goals, on daily wins that would help rebuild my confidence. I began to set simple tasks for myself, waking up early, practicing my speeches, studying the writings of the great philosophers. Each time I completed a task, no matter how minor, I felt a sense of accomplishment, a boost to my confidence. Over time, these small victories began to add up. I felt my confidence grow, not in leaps and bounds, but in steady, consistent steps. I realized that true confidence is not a gift but a skill, honed and developed through persistence and practice. Consider the tale of a Roman baker, a man known for his skill but plagued by self-doubt. He worried constantly that his bread would not rise, that his customers would turn to other bakers. He would fail. His anxiety was such that he often stayed up all night, obsessing over his dough, his ingredients, his oven. One day, a wise old woman, a regular customer, noticed his distress and asked him, "Why do you worry so? You bake bread every day. Trust in your skill, trust in your hands." She suggested he focus not on the perfect loaf, but on the process, on kneading the dough, on watching the rise, on feeling the heat of the oven. The baker took her advice. He began to take pride in the small steps, the daily rituals of his craft. He found that by focusing on these daily wins, his confidence grew. He trusted in his ability, in his process, and his bread, now made with confidence, became more delicious than ever. Or think of a Roman teacher who doubted her ability to inspire her students. She felt overwhelmed by the responsibility, pressure to impart knowledge, to shape young minds. Every mistake, every challenge seemed to weigh heavily on her, eroding her confidence. One day, she decided to change her approach. Instead of focusing on the outcome, on the success or failure of her lessons, she focused on the small victories, the moments when a student's eyes lit up with understanding, quiet satisfaction of a well-prepared lesson, the small improvements she saw day by day. She began to see each class, each interaction as a step forward, a small win. Her confidence grew, not because she suddenly became the perfect teacher, but because she learned to value the process, the journey, the daily steps that lead to growth. People often believe that confidence is something innate, something we are either born with or without. But the Stoics teach us that confidence is like a muscle, grows with use, with practice, with effort. It is built through daily actions, through small victories that, over time, accumulate into something great. There is a quiet strength in rebuilding your confidence through daily wins. I once met a young artist who was struggling with her craft. She felt her work was never good enough, that she lacked the talent to succeed. I told her, "Do not focus on creating a masterpiece. Focus on creating, on the act of painting, expressing yourself. Each stroke, each canvas is a step forward." She took my words to heart and began to paint every day, not for praise or recognition, but for the joy of the process. She found that with each painting, her confidence grew, her skills improved, her art flourished. She discovered that the true masterpiece was not any single work, but the journey itself. So, how do you rebuild your confidence through daily wins in your own life? Start by setting small, achievable goals. Focus on the process, not the outcome. Celebrate each step forward, each small victory. Remember that confidence is built not in grand gestures, but in the quiet, steady progress of daily effort. Remember, as I have often reflected, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. By focusing on daily wins, you build a foundation of confidence that will carry you through life's challenges. And most importantly, by rebuilding your confidence through daily wins, you discover the true power within you. Power to shape your life, to define your destiny, to become the person you are meant to be. This, my friends, is the path of the Stoic. To find strength in the small victories, to build confidence one step at a time, and to embrace the journey of becoming. 4. Transform fear into fuel for action. Fear. It is an emotion as old as humanity itself, primal instinct designed to protect us from danger. Yet, how often do we find ourselves paralyzed by fear, unable to take that crucial step forward, held back by the what-ifs that plague our minds? The Stoics teach us that fear, rather than being an enemy, can be our greatest ally if we learn to harness its power. To transform fear into fuel for action is to turn our greatest weakness into our greatest strength. Allow me to recount a moment from my own life where fear became a catalyst for growth, rather than a barrier. It was a time when Rome was threatened not by external enemies, but by internal strife. Factions within the Senate were plotting against one another, alliances were shifting, and trust was a rare commodity. Rumors of betrayal swirled around me, and I found myself gripped by a deep, pervasive fear. Fear of losing control, fear of being overthrown, fear of the unknown. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself walking through the dark corridors of the palace. I could feel the weight of my fears pressing down on me, the shadows whispering of dangers lurking around every corner. As I passed by the room of my personal physician, I saw a light still burning. Curious, I entered to find him awake, reading a manuscript. Seeing my troubled expression, he invited me to sit. "You seem burdened, Emperor," he observed gently. I confessed my fears to him, expecting sympathy, but instead he asked me a question that caught me off guard. "What is it you fear most, my lord?" I paused, reflecting. "I fear losing Rome," I admitted. "I fear the chaos that may come, the uncertainty." He nodded thoughtfully and said, "Fear is natural, but it is not the fear itself that is our enemy. It is what we do with it. Fear can cripple us, or it can propel us to action. You, Emperor, have a choice." His words struck a chord deep within me. I realized that my fear, rather than being a weakness, was a powerful motivator. It was a signal that something needed to change, that I needed to act. Inspired, I made a decision. Instead of hiding away in the palace, consumed by fear, I would confront the Senate directly. I called for an emergency meeting, facing my adversaries head-on. I spoke openly about the divisions, the distrust, the fear that gripped not just me but all of Rome. "Fear is not a sign of weakness," I told them. "It is a call to action. It is a reminder that we must come together, find common ground, and work towards the stability of our empire." My words resonated, and slowly, the tension in the room began to dissipate. We were able to forge a new path forward, not by denying our fears, but by using them as a driving force for change. Consider the story of a young Roman sailor, new to the sea, facing his first great storm. As the waves crashed against the ship and the winds howled, he felt a surge of fear rise within him. His first instinct was to hide below deck, to escape the chaos above. But an old, seasoned sailor grabbed him by the arm and said, "Do not fear the storm, boy. Use it. Let it sharpen your senses. Let it drive you to act. The storm is not your enemy. Your fear is." The young sailor, inspired by these words, took his place at the helm, guiding the ship with a newfound determination. He discovered that the fear he felt was not a curse but a gift. It made him alert, focused, alive. He learned to navigate not in spite of the storm, because of it. Or think of a Roman sculptor who, despite her talent, was paralyzed by the fear of failure. Every time she approached a new block of marble, she hesitated, fearing that she would make a mistake, that her work would not live up to her own expectation. One day, a friend, noticing her hesitation, asked, "What is it that holds you back?" She replied, "I fear that I will not create something worthy." A friend smiled and said, "Then use that fear. Let it guide your hand. Let it push you to create not just what is good, but what is great." Fear is not an obstacle. It is the fuel that drives us to excellence. The sculptor took this advice to heart. She began to work with a new intensity, a new passion, driven by her fear not of failure, but of not trying. Her work, once hesitant and unsure, became bold, dynamic, and alive. People often see fear as something to be avoided, something to run from. But the Stoics teach us that fear, like fire, can be a destructive force, or it can be a powerful source of energy. It all depends on how we choose to use it. There is a hidden strength in transforming fear into fuel for action. I once met a merchant who was afraid of expanding his business, fearing that he would lose everything he had worked so hard to build. He came to me for guidance, and I told him, "Your fear is a sign that you care, that you are invested. Use that fear. Let it push you to plan carefully, to act wisely, to strive not just for survival, but for success." He followed my advice, and rather than being paralyzed by fear, he used it to fuel his ambition. His business thrived, not because he was fearless, but because he learned to use his fear as a guide, as a motivator. So, how do you transform fear into fuel for action in your own life? Start by acknowledging your fears, by understanding them. Ask yourself, what is it I truly fear? Then, rather than running from it, use it. Let it sharpen your focus, drive your efforts, motivate you to take that first step. Remember, as I have often pondered, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. By transforming fear into fuel, you reclaim your power, your strength, capacity to act. And most importantly, by choosing to use fear as fuel, you embrace the path of courage, growth, action. This, my friends, is the path of the Stoic: to face fear, to use it, and to transform it into a force that drives us forward ever towards greatness. 5. Create unshakable mental resilience. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns, challenges that test our limits, moments that threaten to break us. Yet, the Stoics teach us that our true strength lies not in the absence of hardship, but in our ability to endure it. To create unshakable mental resilience is to build a fortress within, a place where no external force can disturb our peace of mind. But how do we cultivate this inner strength, this ability to remain steadfast in the face of adversity? Let me take you back to a time during one of Rome's darkest hours. The barbarians were at our gates, threatening to breach the city walls. The citizens were in a state of panic. The Senate was divided, and even my most trusted generals seemed unsure of how to respond. Fear spread like wildfire, and the air was thick with uncertainty. As the leader of Rome, I felt the weight of the empire on my shoulders, the responsibility to protect my people, to maintain order amidst the chaos. It was in this moment, surrounded by doubt and fear, that I realized the importance of mental resilience, not just for myself, but for all those who looked to me for guidance. One morning, I rose before dawn and made my way to a secluded hill outside the city. From there, I could see the entire landscape of Rome, the city I had sworn to protect. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the rooftops. I took a deep breath and began to reflect on the teachings of the Stoics, on the importance of maintaining a calm and steady mind in times of crisis. The mind, I reminded myself, is the ruler of all. It is not what happens to us, but how we respond that defines our strength. I made a decision that day. Instead of succumbing to fear and panic, I would cultivate mental resilience. I would practice finding stillness amidst the chaos, focusing on what I could control and letting go of what I could not. I called a meeting with my generals and advisors, and I spoke to them not of fear, but of strength, the importance of staying calm and collected. We cannot control the actions of the enemy, I told them, but we can control our own minds, our own reactions. We must remain strong, not just in body, but in spirit. Slowly, I watched as a sense of calm settled over the room. My words had a ripple effect. As I remained steady, so too did those around me. We formulated a plan, one based not on panic, but on strategic thinking, on resilience. When the time came, we faced the enemy not with fear, but with a quiet, unshakable resolve. And as the battle unfolded, it was not our weapons or our numbers that gave us the upper hand, but our ability to remain steadfast, to stay focused, to be resilient. Consider the story of a Roman farmer who faced a series of devastating storms that destroyed his crops year after year. Each season, he would plant with hope, only to see his hard work washed away by the relentless rain. His neighbors, witnessing his plight, advised him to give up. to leave his land and find work elsewhere. But the farmer, determined and resilient, refused to be broken. He began to study the patterns of the weather, to learn the ways of the soil. He adjusted his planting techniques, reinforced his fields, and learned to adapt to the unpredictable nature of the storms. Over time, his crops began to flourish, not because the storms ceased, but because he had become stronger, more resilient, more adaptable. He understood that true strength comes not from avoiding hardship, but from enduring it, learning from it, growing through it. Or think of a Roman philosopher who, despite his wisdom, was often criticized by his peers, his teachings dismissed by those who envied him. For years he faced ridicule and rejection, his ideas mocked in public forums. Yet, he remained steadfast in his pursuit of truth, in his commitment to his beliefs. When asked how he endured such criticism, he replied, "I do not seek the approval of others, but the approval of my own conscience. I am guided not by the opinions of men, by the principles of reason and virtue." Over time, his resilience paid off. His teachings gained recognition, his ideas began to spread, and he became known not just for his wisdom, but for his unshakable resolve in the face of adversity. People often believe that resilience is about being tough, about never showing weakness. Stoics teach us that true resilience is about adaptability, about being flexible in the face of change, about bending without breaking. It is about finding strength, not in resistance, but in endurance. There is a profound wisdom in creating unshakable mental resilience. I once met a young legionnaire who was struggling with the loss of his comrades in battle. He felt overwhelmed by grief, unable to move forward. I told him, "Your grief is a testament to your love, your loyalty, but do not let it consume you. Find strength in their memory. Honor them by continuing to fight, to live, to endure." He took my words to heart and began to focus not on his loss, but on his purpose, his duty. Over time, he found a new strength, a new resilience, not by forgetting his comrades, by carrying their memory with him, by turning his pain into a source of inner strength. So how do you create unshakable mental resilience in your own life? Start by accepting that hardship is a part of life, that change is inevitable. Focus on what you can control: your mind, your reactions, your action. Practice finding stillness amidst chaos, clarity amidst confusion. Remember that resilience is not about never falling, but about always getting back up. Remember, as I have often reflected, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. By creating unshakable mental resilience, you build a fortress within, a place of strength that no external force can breach. And most importantly, by choosing resilience, you commit to a life of strength, courage, of unwavering purpose. This, my friends, is the path of the Stoic: to remain steady in the face of life's storms, to find strength in adversity, and to endure with grace and dignity. 6. Forge meaningful connections to strengthen your resolve. In life, we are not islands unto ourselves. We are interconnected beings, shaped and strengthened by the relationships we build, the bonds we forge. The Stoics teach us that while self-reliance is vital, equally important is the cultivation of meaningful connections, those ties that bind us to others, that inspire us, that hold us steady when the world seems to sway. To strengthen our resolve, we must not walk this path alone. We must seek out those who share our values, who challenge us to grow, who stand by us in times of trial. Let me share a story from a time when I found myself relying not on my own strength, but on the strength of those around me. It was a period of great uncertainty in Rome. The empire was vast, the challenges many, and the decisions I faced as emperor weighed heavily upon me. There were moments when the burden seemed almost too much to bear, when doubt crept into my mind and made me question my every move. It was during one of these moments of doubt that I found myself walking through the gardens of the palace, seeking solace in the quiet of nature. As I walked, I was joined by my old friend and advisor, Lucius. He had served alongside me for many years, a man of great wisdom and insight. Seeing the troubled expression on my face, he asked, "Marcus, why do you carry this burden alone? Do you not trust those who have pledged their loyalty to you?" His words struck me, for it was true. I had become so consumed by my own responsibilities that I had forgotten the strength that lay in those around me. I replied, "It is not a matter of trust, Lucius. It is a matter of feeling that this burden is mine alone to bear." Lucius smiled and said, "Even the strongest tree does not stand alone in the forest. It is supported by the roots that connect it to others, by the network of life that surrounds it. So too must you allow yourself to be supported by those who care for you, who believe in you." His words resonated deeply with me. I realized that I had been isolating myself, believing that to show strength meant to show no need for others. But true strength, I understood then, comes not from standing alone, from standing together. That evening, I called for a council, inviting not just my generals and senators, but also those whom I trusted most deeply. My family, closest friends, my most loyal advisors. We spoke openly, sharing our fears, our hopes, our concerns. It was a moment of profound connection, a reminder that I was not alone in my struggles, that I had a community to lean on. Together, we formulated a plan, drawing on the collective wisdom and strength of those present. I felt my resolve strengthen, not because I was without doubt, but because I was supported, uplifted, fortified by those around me. Consider the tale of a Roman musician who, despite his talent, struggled with stage fright. Every time he stood before an audience, his hands would shake, his heart would race. He felt isolated in his fear, believing that he alone bore this burden. One day, after a particularly difficult performance, an older musician took him aside and said, "We all feel fear, my friend, but we do not face it alone. Look to those who stand with you, who play beside you. Find strength in their presence, and you will find the courage to face your own fears." The young musician took these words to heart. He began to look not at the faces of the audience, but at the faces of his fellow musician, finding comfort in their shared purpose, their shared resolve. He found that the more he connected with them, the stronger his own confidence grew. Or think of a Roman healer, overwhelmed by the constant demands of caring for the sick and wounded. She felt the weight of her responsibilities bearing down on her, fear of making mistakes, failing those in her care. One day, an old mentor came to visit her and said, "You are not alone in this. Let others help you. Share the burden, and you will find your strength renewed." She realized then that she had been trying to do everything herself, to bear the weight of the world on her own shoulders. She began to build a team, to trust in the skills and support of others. Together, they worked more efficiently, more effectively. She discovered that by forging meaningful connections, she not only strengthened her own resolve, but also created a network of care that benefited all. People often believe that to be strong means to stand alone, to bear their burdens in silence. But the Stoics teach us that true strength comes from community, from shared purpose, from the connections we build with others. There is a profound wisdom in forging meaningful connections to strengthen your resolve. I once met a young scholar who was struggling with the pressures of his studies. He felt isolated, burdened by the weight of expectations. I told him, "Find others who walk the same path, who understand your struggle. Lean on them, learn from them, and you will find your own strength multiplied." He took my advice and began to form study groups, to seek out mentors, connect with peers. He found that in sharing his journey with others, his own resolve grew stronger, his own purpose clearer. So, how do you forge meaningful connections to strengthen your resolve in your own life? Start by reaching out, by building a community around you. Seek out those who share your values, who inspire you, who challenge you to grow. Remember that strength is not found in isolation, but in connection, in the bonds we forge with others. Remember, as I have often reflected, we are like rivers, we rise and fall together. Alone we may flow, but together we create a mighty force. By forging meaningful connections, you build a network of strength, a support system that fortifies your resolve and empowers you to face life's challenges. And most importantly, by choosing to build connections, you embrace the path of community, of shared strength, collective purpose. This, my friends, is the path of the Stoic, to stand strong not alone, but together, to draw strength from those around us, and to forge a life filled with meaning and connection. Over time, these Stoic practices began to unlock a part of myself I had never truly known, a wellspring of inner strength, resilience, and wisdom. I discovered that my true power did not come from my position as emperor, but from my ability to understand and master my own mind. I realized that by turning inward, By cultivating stillness and reflection, I could tap into a deeper source of strength, one that was not dependent on external circumstances, but rooted in my own inner being. Consider the story of a Roman craftsman, a potter known for his skill but plagued by a sense of inadequacy. Despite his talent, he often felt his work was never good enough, that he lacked the creativity and inspiration of other artists. One day, an old mentor suggested he take some time away from his workshop and practice Stoic meditation. Focus not on the clay, the mentor advised, but on yourself. The true masterpiece is not the pot, the artist. The potter, though skeptical, decided to try. He began to spend each morning in quiet reflection, focusing on his breath, clearing his mind. He started journaling his thoughts, his fears, his desires. Over time, he found that his work began to change. His pots were no longer just functional objects, but works of art, expressions of his own inner journey. He realized that the creativity he sought was not something external, but a reflection of his own inner state. Or think of a Roman athlete who, despite his physical prowess, felt a lack of purpose and direction. He had won many competitions, earned countless accolades, yet felt a sense of emptiness, a longing for something more. He turned to Stoic practices, seeking a deeper understanding of himself. He began to meditate, journal, to reflect on his true motivations. He discovered that his desire for victory was not driven by a love of sport, but a fear of inadequacy. By unlocking this inner truth, he was able to transform his approach, to compete not out of fear, but out of love for the game. He found a new joy in his sport, a new sense of purpose, and his performance reached new heights. Not because he trained harder, because he had unlocked his true potential. People often seek fulfillment in external achievements, believing that success, wealth, or recognition will unlock their inner potential. But the Stoics teach us that true fulfillment comes from within, from understanding ourselves, from mastering our own minds and spirits. 7. Unlock your inner potential with Stoic practices. Within each of us lies a vast reservoir of untapped potential, a wellspring of strength, wisdom, and clarity that often remains hidden beneath the noise and chaos of daily life. The Stoics teach us that to unlock this inner potential, we must turn inward, cultivate stillness, and engage in practices that sharpen our minds and strengthen our spirits. How do we begin this journey of self-discovery? How do we tap into the hidden depths of our own being? Let me share with you a moment from my own life when I discovered the transformative power of Stoic practices. It was a time of great personal turmoil for me. The weight of leadership, the constant demands of governing an empire, and the unending pressure of making the right decisions had begun to take their toll. I felt a growing sense of fatigue, disconnect from my own purpose, as if I were drifting through life without a clear direction. Despite my power and position, I felt a profound emptiness, a sense that there was something more I needed to discover within myself. One day, seeking respite from the relentless pace of court life, I retreated to a small, secluded garden within the palace grounds, a place where I could find peace and quiet, away from the noise and chaos of the city. As I sat there, under the shade of an old olive tree, I remembered a teaching from the Stoics. Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up, if thou wilt ever dig. These words struck me, and I realized that I had been looking outward for answers that could only be found within. I began to practice Stoic meditation, a simple yet profound exercise. Each day, I would sit in silence, focusing on my breath, letting go of the distractions of the external world. I reflected on my thoughts, my emotions, my actions, and their alignment with my values and principles. I asked myself, what am I truly seeking? What is the purpose behind my actions? As I continued this practice, I began to notice a shift within me. My mind became clearer, my spirit lighter, my sense of purpose stronger. I also started to incorporate daily journaling, another Stoic practice, where I would write down my thoughts, my reflections, my observations of the day. I found that by putting my thoughts on paper, I could see patterns, recognize where I was straying from my path, and make conscious decisions to realign myself with my true purpose. This simple act of writing became a powerful tool for self-awareness and growth. There is a profound freedom in unlocking your inner potential with Stoic practices. I once met a young philosopher who was struggling to find his voice. to express his ideas in a way that resonated with others. He felt blocked, frustrated, unsure of his path. I told him, "Do not seek your voice outside of yourself. It is already within you, waiting to be discovered. Practice stillness, reflection, and you will find it." He took my advice and began to meditate, to journal, to reflect deeply on his thoughts and beliefs. Over time, his voice emerged, clear and strong, a reflection of his true self. He found that by unlocking his inner potential, he was able to express his ideas with confidence and clarity, to inspire others with his words. So, how do you unlock your inner potential with Stoic practices in your own life? Start by turning inward, by cultivating stillness and reflection. Practice meditation, focus on your breath, clear your mind of distractions, journal your thoughts, your feelings, your observations. Reflect on your actions, your motivations, your purpose. Remember that your true potential lies not in what you achieve, but in who you are. Remember, as I have often contemplated, nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. By unlocking your inner potential with Stoic practices, you tap into a deeper source of strength, wisdom, and clarity that will guide you on your path. And most importantly, by choosing to unlock your inner potential, you embrace the journey of self-discovery, of growth, of becoming the best version of yourself. This, my friends, is the path of the Stoic: to turn inward, to cultivate inner strength, and to unlock the limitless potential that lies within each of us. As we journey through life, we are all faced with challenges that test our strength, our resolve, and our sense of purpose. Yet, within each of us lies the power to rebuild, to grow, and to become more than we ever thought possible. The Stoic principles we've explored today are not just ancient teachings. They are tools, powerful and practical, for navigating the complexities of our modern world. By breaking free from destructive patterns, harnessing the power of self-mastery, rebuilding confidence through daily wins, transforming fear into action, cultivating mental resilience, forging meaningful connections, and unlocking our inner potential, we open the door to a life of greater purpose and inner peace. Remember, the path of the Stoic is not a destination but a journey, one of continuous growth, reflection, and self-improvement. Embrace these steps, integrate them into your daily life, and watch as you begin to transform not just your actions, but your very being. Let us move forward with courage, clarity, and a steadfast commitment to becoming the best version of ourselves. Power to rebuild is in your hands. Start today and discover the limitless potential lies within you.